Hi, Trevor here, reflecting on live stream music. Welcome and thank you for stopping by. It's fantastic you are here. Well, I trust you enjoyed my last video from American icon band the Doobie Brothers. And through their song, The Doctor, we looked about the inspiration of music in our lives. So I trust you found that one an encouragement. Well, we're going from there to a very influential band today. And to put a bit of context into this story, in 1960 there was four guys in Liverpool that changed everything. Of course, we're talking about the Beatles. And certainly between 1960 and 1965, these guys were packing out arenas, screaming fans and the rest of it. And it was just, and then around 1965, they decided, look, we've had enough of this screaming fan thing. We're going to go and start to become artists. And that certainly ushered in a whole heap of people, including people like the Beach Boys, who again released songs like Good Vibrations, which was turning music into more of an art form than anything else. Now, I was having a little bit of a think about that today in the context of these guys today, because the band I'm talking about today was formed in 1965 in Los Angeles. We've got John Densmore on drums, Robbie Krieger on guitar, Ray Manzarek on keyboards, and he's a master, oh my goodness, and Jim Morrison on lead vocals. Now, you know exactly who I'm talking about. We're talking about the Doors. Now, the Doors were only around for a very short space of time, really, about 6 years, until Jim Morrison died in 1971, but just really hit the ground running and really understood where the music was and where the culture of America was at the time. Because what was happening around this time was that the culture was changing. There was a countercultural movement happening in America, things like the Vietnam War. I know in Australia they're bringing in a decimal currency, and of course the iconic moon landing happened all in these late 1960s, and the world was changing. And sort of, yeah, and so the Doors were just in the right place at the right time, because, you know, when the world is changing like it was so rapidly at this point, you're not going to write lyrics which we've just sung before. You're going to write lyrics which stretch and encourage and lead us into new places. But not just the words, but also the feeling and the emotion and the vibe of the music as well needed to change. And the Doors were very, very influential in this way. Now, if you think about, obviously, Jim Morrison's vocals, very, very unique vocalist, a bit of a lowered voice, but he had just compelling crooning smoothness about him that made him just stand out, really. And then you think about Ray Manzarek on keyboards. He was an absolute master. Of course, Jim's no longer with us. Ray's no longer with us either. He was an absolute master. Now, of course, the Doors didn't have a bass player, so Ray very much was doing his iconic keyboard riffs, songs like Light My Fire and Love Her Madly and Riders on the Storm. They're actually three songs I'm going to get onto in a minute. As well as keeping the bass of the band going. He was an absolute master at what he did and very much defined the sound of the Doors. And then we've got Robbie and John were providing an absolutely bulletproof, tight rhythm section. And so the four of them together created what was not just songs, but kind of art pieces almost, that took us beyond ourselves and into other places. Of course, the Doors were very contentious at their time, but extremely influential. And then between 1967 and 1971, there were 6 studio albums. So that's a lot of records for a short space of time. And there were 3 released after James Morrison's death in 1971. There were 5 live albums, 21 compilation albums, and a few other bits and pieces, 8 box sets and 23 archive albums. Now, it's estimated these guys have sold 100 million albums, making them very, very successful in the scheme of things. Rolling Stone, in many of the lists that they do, put them 41st and the 100 top musicians of bands of all time. They're inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993, and they've also got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, amongst other things. I think there's some Grammy Awards in there as well. In fact, when you think about the Doors' 100 million albums, there was 8 consecutive gold albums. Obviously, you know, in the Jim Morrison period, they were extremely popular, and certainly even after Jim Morrison's death, there were a couple of other albums that went to gold. 100 million albums. What can we say? What can we say about Jim Morrison? One of a kind, a bit of a wild child, evocative, passionate, sensual even, very outspoken, but an artist and an absolute wild child. There are some well-documented live gigs that the Doors did, which have gone into infamous category, but they've always been remembered because that's who Jim Morrison was. He was a force of nature. And I was thinking about where to go with this today. I was thinking about the song Light My Fire, which obviously when you think about the Doors is one of the songs you think of. There's a couple of others I've got in a minute as well. And I was thinking, well, yeah, Light My Fire is obviously about, you know, a guy talking to a girl about lighting his fire and getting him going and inspiring and passion and all the rest of it. That's very much what the song Light My Fire is about. But I was going to take a little bit of a philosophical approach to this as well and think about the fact that, as I've already said in this video, the Doors were the right band in the right place at the right time. The Beatles were doing what they were doing in the UK and also significantly doing stuff in the US as well. And bands like the Beach Boys were becoming artists. And the Doors as well were becoming artists. And so when we think about lighting a fire, I think what we can say about the Doors, because as I've already said, that they were extremely influential in the countercultural movement of the late 1960s, that they lit the fire for that generation. You know, they saw where the world was and what the world needed, and they just knew how to write and they knew how to perform to capture that moment. And it's quite interesting when you think about the fact that at the time, people were looking to have their fire lit. They were looking to be something different, to be in a different culture, to trying to shake things up a bit. And sometimes we need something to inspire us to do that. And I'm very, very well thinking that the Doors were certainly very influential in that space, because they took audiences on a bit of a journey with them. I mean, it's so whimsical in places. You think about Ray's keyboard playing, for instance, they just go on, the solos just go on for a while, and you just get swept away for the ride. And so then you start to imagine and you start to dream and you start to hope for different things. This is the power of music, which I talked about last time. And certainly for the Doors, they lit the fire of their generation. And, you know, it's quite interesting now when we think about where we are today. I'm wondering whether generations' fires get lit anymore. We don't know what lights fires anymore. We don't know what inspires people anymore, really. You might have some things that inspire you, but not to this extent, not to the extent where the society and culture has changed. The Doors were extremely influential in this space, that is for sure. So the question, I suppose, for all of us today is, what is your inspiration? What is the thing that lights your fire? What is the thing that gets you going? What is the thing to get you to stand up and take note and to have a look at yourself and think, I could do life better than this? What inspires you to do that? Yeah, it's an interesting one, this one, because we always want to be inspired by something. We think, well, we want to do something different, but how are we going to do that? We need something to get us started. As I talked with Diana Ross a couple of videos ago about chain reaction, the fact that we need to take that first step. What inspires us for that first step? We might go inside of our hearts and our brains and think, okay, I'm going to do this thing, but then we don't get around to doing it. We need a little bit more than that. I suppose what was happening in the late 1960s is that everybody was thinking this. I was thinking we need life to be different than it is. life just can't continue the way that it is. And so a movement well and truly got established in the late 1960s, which the Doors were really and truly part of. For me, I was born in 1965, and so for me, I was only 5 in 1970, and so it's a little bit before my time, but certainly my parents' influence generation certainly got influenced by this stuff. There's a generation of yes, we can. We are individuals, and we have something to contribute to this world, as much as our leaders do. So, very hard sometimes to put countercultural stuff into a bit of context, but I liken them to the songs that the Doors did. They just had a way about them that inspired people through their lyrics, but more importantly, just through Jim Morrison's compelling stage presence, his ability to stick his finger up at the society from time to time as well, but his ability just to get to transform audiences and to move them en masse. This was the power of Jim Morrison when he was around. And Jim Morrison died at the age of 27. 27 seems to be a bit of an age when some significant people died. Kurt Cobain is another that died at 27. And Amy Winehouse is another. There's something about the age of 27. In fact, if you put 27 Club into Google, you'll see what I mean. So, again, a band that was very much in the right place at the right time. This is where the Doors, that's why the Doors become as successful as they did. So, I suppose, as again, the encouragement for us today, what inspires you in your life journey? Well, on to the clips. And yes, we've got 3 songs from the Doors today. We have got Light My Fire. Now, this is quite a respectful performance on the Ed Sullivan Show by the Doors back in 1967. Light My Fire came off the album, the self-titled album of 1967. We then got a couple of albums from LA Woman, which was released in 1971. This was released 3 months before Jim Morrison's death. So how sort of haunting is that? We've got Riders on the Storm. This song has been hailed for its significance of the keyboards in particular. How good Ray, again, being able to pick up the rain and the whole rest of it. Riders of the, not really sure what this song's about, but I think, again, it just kind of captures the whole, what song needs to capture the imagination of generations, and that's certainly what Riders on the Storm has done. There's a bit of a tribute clip, so a few little bits of images and videos all thrown in there. And then we've got Love Her Madly. Now, I love the keyboard riff in this song in particular. Again, off LA Woman. This is apparently the last song that Jim Morrison ever recorded. And again, it's just about, loving your woman no matter what, loving her madly, not just at the start, but throughout your relationship. And so the links to those 3 songs are in the description below, and I've also included my last video from the Doobie Brothers, who of course came along in 1970, and I suppose built on what had been going on in the 1960s with bands like the Doors and the Beatles and the Beach Boys and all of that. Because the Doobie Brothers themselves also weren't scared to go across genres, so that's very inspirational indeed. So if you want to recap on their video, that's there for you as well. Well, that's it for today. If you've come back for another video as we've looked at the Doors and their inspiration for a generation, or this is your first time to Life Reflections of Music, welcome to the channel. And the encouragement always is, please hang around to the end of my videos because you may find them encouraging. Well, that's it for today. Next time we're going to go on to Aussie band. We're going to come back to actually Aussie band Dragon. So until then, I'll catch you around. Bye for now.